BIP of Bizarre Interest Productions, and I have no idea what this video is going to be called. So look, calling myself a tokusatsu reviewer is a bit of a stretch, I admit. And I know I said I prefer to talk about Power Rangers, Super Sentai, and Kamen Rider because I feel like the content that was out there wasn't necessarily to my taste. And, you know, sometimes you just have to be the change in the world you want to see. But given that video was supposed to come out yesterday, had to be pushed back thanks to certain time-consuming behind-the-scene issues that roughly took me about 5 hours off my usual schedule. But a certain video popped up in my recommendations, and I decided to watch it because this is one I've been anticipating for this creator for quite some time, and patience usually rewards those who wait. This is actually my second time watching this video because I watched it yesterday, and it was a huge stress relief from what I was going through yesterday. So yeah, this isn't going to be like a review or a response, just more of an analysis and building off that regarding my own thoughts. Hell, I'm not even going to show you much of the review because reaction content isn't what I necessarily would consider lazy content or something I would actually want to do either. But I think it's a good opportunity to show you guys how you can use your own critical thinking analysis, do understanding others' analysis and perspective, because it is a well put together video. Like, it's almost 3 hours long. That's really impressive for how much I'd have to condense. I'm actually going to start this from the Ikazuchi video because we already watched the preview that was months back. Which, I mean, yeah, go watch it if you want to. I think a minor problem when it comes to Kamen Rider, Power Rangers, and Tokusatsu criticism is that some people just end up parroting and listening to all the voices of the people with a large enough following well. And I'm not saying, like, anyone like Linkar or even Markusatsu is wrong or for making content in the first place. Like, make content because you love it, obviously. But there is a point where some people just end up letting themselves willingly choose to let those opinions go to a pedestal, and that can be dangerous for content creators with malicious intentions, spreading false information, or using their own biases to warrant the perception of the truth. None of which is happening with this video, by the way, or the video that I'm basing this off of in. But my problem is that the fandom itself will literally end up repeating the same talking points, and then people get mad at the creators of these videos, and instead of, you know, pointing out the fandom has every right to use their own intelligence and stop blaming other people for choosing to let themselves fall into their own hive minds, instead of actually listening to the videos and seeing where you actually agree and disagree with. It's why the better Tokutubers, aka who made the video, are ones that actually put facts, thoughts, explanations, and nuance into their videos. Okay. I chuckled because the assault grip doesn't fit Jin's joke. I know he has both himself and someone else working on those scripts, but yeah, that was actually pretty clever. I will say I know a lot of people who would have preferred if Dodo became Ikazuchi. I think if Ikazuchi was revealed earlier with his brother using the satellite to help track them down, I think it'd flow better. Damn, I forgot he has a whole team. Respect for the editor. Oh, the workplace competition arc time. I actually really like this arc, but it does have issues preventing it from reaching its full potential. And from what I heard, what the producer roundtable discussion on the Toei Toku fan club had said, producer Omori had expressed his worries that Guy's workplace harassment may have been written too realistically to be appropriate for the target demographic, which I think is interesting. And the workplace competition arc was added at the insistence of him who wanted to have more of Aruto as president of Hidden Intelligence. It does make you wonder if it was cut, would Hidden Manufacturing have been in the second and third quarters more, since it would be likely implied that Guy would have just taken over Hidden and forced Aruto out. Hell, he noticed the workplace competition arc was critically divisive. Hey, just like over here in the West. But he still enjoyed it and noted the viewership rating actually improved with it, which, hey, is a good thing. But I don't 100% agree with Markusatsu on the arc being demoralizing, but that's more on the issue of the fact that some of the 5 stages are handled better than others. For example, I didn't like the first stage of the corporate challenge because Aruto wasn't afraid to destroy other human gears in the past before, since he could rebuild them or at least remembered enough to fix them later on. But Sakio wasn't necessarily presented in a negative light, and Sakio and Tachibana proved human gears and Zaya spec users can reconcile. And the Raiders are proof for every good human and human gear, there's also a human whose society can mentally or forcibly hack into just being as vile as the people, well, the supposed life forms that they fear. The second round I actually like much more because even though Aruto lost, it wasn't Smell's fault of the property damages to the house, and Aruto was able to reach the real estate salesman, find a house that was fitting to him, wanting a house that wasn't necessarily high quality, but emotionally fitting, and Guy had a point in companies can't cover their expenses, but with more business acumen, Aruto could have won had he had more chances to combine morality with sales, because Zaya ultimately won based on not only the amount of people that they managed to reach, but the profits too. However, this one should have been one episode instead of two. Also, I will say while Thouser working with the Raider to beat up the Magia makes sense, I honestly think this arc would have benefited from the Magia Aruto work to be able to fight off their control to help Aruto out, to prove that human gears do have self-control, and even in the form of Singularity, they will choose to fight for humanity over their negative instincts the arc is implanting onto them. As for the third round is actually my favorite because we got a human gear and Zaya spec competition in the courtroom between a heroic attorney and villainous prosecutor that actually exposes the dynamic of the situation, given that it's mostly just about finding the truth. The spec user Naoto isn't the actual Raider though, which helps us out. Besides the second half introducing Metal Cluster and Fuwa saving him from it, not only do we get Aruto grown enough as a fighter that Shining Assault and Thouser are now equals, but we have Fuwa's development with him fully on Aruto's side trying to figure out the actual truth, and Ichimori, Zaya's rep, ends up supporting Bingo since Bingo managed to prove the innocence of his client with special evidence that he managed to find. They were also able to determine the marriage scam case was the person behind the marriage scam case was the corrupt police officer who set up the defendant to fluster. Both parties were able to acknowledge one another. Aruto's side won fair and square, and it shows both groups could come together to combat the corruption on both a macro and micro scale. Also, I wanted to talk about the marriage round because I actually thought this one was funny and had a good resolution to Metal Cluster Hopper, but for some reason it wasn't included in the competition arc. It could have been 6 rounds with this one technically being a no result. Like, why did you not do it? Like, consider this one 3.5 since it follows up the court round with one of the people hurt by the marriage scam. And heck, Match let himself go berserk in order to expose who the true Raider was and get him and the woman who got scammed to confront their feelings. But then we get to round 4 between the firefighter, human gear, and human captain, respectively. And I like the fact that this one had both groups working together to rescue the civilians, and putting the corruption and competition aside, especially in the end where the human gear sacrifices himself to allow everyone else to escape the crumbling building, because it shows that the people Guy hired aren't necessarily evil because they're under his employment, but the firefighter clearly respected both while the actual Raider and Zaya's employee didn't because he cares about profits over the lives he has to allegedly save. And even Guy gives Aruto the win given everyone agrees 119 worked his rear off. Like, there's this beautiful shot of Aruto carrying 119 out of the flames. No, he's seriously the second human gear after Wazoo to go down entirely on his own terms. And here's the argument that Guy cheating makes the situation and the writing for the arc worse. I half agree, but the funny thing is, I think having Guy create the arc isn't necessarily a bad thing, because we've seen human gear that are supposed to work with the arc eventually develop kindness and a drive not to end up fighting humanity. So I don't think his actions take away from that, especially in the situations where you have Jin, Naki, and Ikazuchi, with Horobi taking the longest to actually follow through that mentality. But round 5. Yeah, I definitely agree with the MC check it out criticism. But like, this entire round was a mismatch because human gears can't compete against politicians normally, and even then, Yua baited him into a showdown with the Zetsu Riser he put up. But the Zaya rep was a sleazy politician, and the whole faking their footage argument falls flat because it's against the law to model a human gear after an actual human. The worst part is that there's other evidence and eyewitness accounts from both Fuwa and Izu that they could have added into the investigation and evidence. And they could have had it so the MC didn't take Zetsu Maraiza but was actively fighting to not get hacked by the Arc for malice, only for Yua to attack him and force him to. It would play better with both sides technically having a point, but the actual side profiting off the division would actually cause a wedge between those that are in favor or against human gears instead of being manipulated into seeing all human gears as evil. Remember, in the third quarter of the show, there's specifically other humans who go to Aruto because they don't believe in Guy's ideals and have worked with other human gears before. Delmo's relevant to Naki and Fuwa's development too, which makes my point for me even more. The episode should have presented MC Check It Out as someone the in-universe audience would be left divided on, since he was being set up in front of everyone's eyes on TV. Because yes, Zaya won that round, but it would make the moral ambiguity of the situation be more nuanced if it was reflective with the society that was set up. I will say in regards to Guy having a code of honor in regards to their cheating, there's a way to make it work. Have it that Guy generally doesn't condone cheating, but through Naki's control of Jin as well as Yua, have Yua be the one that's been sabotaging the matches through switching out Naki out of control for Fua to hand out the Raid Risers, because we've seen Yua admit she sees human gears as tools, and given Aruto has proven her otherwise before, her struggling to fight her respect for him with her ideals against his own would make the arc stronger and not make her feel sidelined. Especially since if we later find out that Guy's been controlling them, he's mostly been manipulating Yua without it, so the moment she starts questioning herself, that's when he starts abusing her more, to the point where she starts to see herself as her own tool. That way the arc flows better, because at this point, even though she's won the war, she herself is losing sight of what she actually believes in. Talking about Metal Cluster Hopper, he says growing malice, but the subs for the video says growing malice, and if you wake up feeling like your body is hurting you, as it's hard for you to want to go and get up and just use the bathroom, I can entirely relate. Like, just imagine someone in Gotchard, a human gear in 01, or someone in Miraculous becoming a monster just because they're enraged they have to pee. Alright, that's all I got for you guys. Thanks for watching, and BIP Bizarre Interest Productions, signing off.